The unlikely alliance. Commander Elena Reeves stood on the bridge of the UAS Horizon, her eyes fixed on the holographic display before her. The massive Zarkonian warship loomed in the distance, its crystalline hull glinting in the light of a nearby star. Elena's heart raced, but her face remained impassive. She had trained her entire life for this moment. "Status report," she barked, her voice steady despite the tension in the air. Lieutenant Kai Chen, her second-in-command, responded promptly. "All systems operational, Commander. Shields at maximum capacity. Weapons hot and ready." Elena nodded, her mind racing through the possibilities. The Zarkonians have been humanity's most formidable enemy for decades, their advanced technology and ruthless tactics pushing Earth's defenses to the brink. But now, an opportunity had presented itself, one that could change the course of the war. "Open a channel," Elena ordered, her gaze never leaving the alien vessel. The communications officer complied, and a moment later, the bridge's main screen flickered to life. The image of a Zarkonian appeared, tall, with iridescent scales and piercing, multifaceted eyes. High Admiral Zixtol, leader of the Zarkonian fleet. "Commander Reeves," the alien's voice resonated through the bridge, a mixture of clicks and low rumbles. "I trust you've considered our proposal carefully." Elena's jaw tightened. The proposal, an alliance between humans and Zarkonians against a greater threat, seemed almost laughable. Yet, the evidence was undeniable. Something was coming, something that threatened both their species. "We have, High Admiral," Elena replied, her voice firm. "And while I can't say we're thrilled about the idea, we recognize the necessity. The Void Eaters are a threat to us all." Zixtol's facial tentacles writhed, a sign of agitation or perhaps relief. "Then we are in agreement. Our scientists have pinpointed the location of the Void Eaters' next target. We must act swiftly if we are to have any hope of stopping them." Elena felt the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. This alliance was unprecedented, born of desperation and mutual fear. But if they succeeded, it could mean salvation for both their species. "Transmit the coordinates," Elena said, gesturing to her crew. "We'll rendezvous at the target system. But let me make one thing clear, High Admiral. This is a temporary arrangement. Once the Void Eaters are dealt with, all bets are off." Zixtol's multifaceted eyes seemed to shimmer with something akin to amusement. "Of course, Commander. We wouldn't have it any other way. May your weapons stay sharp and your shields hold strong." The transmission cut off, leaving the bridge in tense silence. Elena turned to her crew, noting the mix of uncertainty and determination on their faces. "I know this isn't what any of us expected," she began, her voice carrying across the bridge. "The Zarkonians have been our enemies for as long as most of us can remember. But the threat we face now is beyond anything we've encountered before. The Void Eaters don't just destroy planets. They consume entire star systems, leaving nothing but emptiness in their wake." She paused, letting her words sink in. "We've been given an opportunity here, not just to save ourselves, but to prove that humanity can rise above its conflicts, that we can work alongside even our greatest enemies when the stakes are high enough." Lieutenant Chen stepped forward, his expression grave. "Commander, with all due respect, how can we trust them? The Zarkonians have never shown any inclination towards peace before." Elena nodded, acknowledging the valid concern. "You're right, Kai. We can't trust them fully, but right now, our goals align. The Void Eaters are a threat to both our species, and neither of us can face them alone. We'll remain vigilant, but we must also be open to the possibility of genuine cooperation." She turned back to the main view screen, where the coordinates of their destination were now displayed. "Set a course for the Epsilon Eridani system, maximum warp, and keep all sensors on high alert. I want to know the moment our Zarkonian allies make any suspicious moves." As the crew sprang into action, Elena felt a mixture of dread and excitement. This mission would push humanity to its limits, testing not just their technology and tactics, but their capacity for adaptation and trust. The journey to Epsilon Eridani was tense, filled with preparations and strategy meetings. Elena spent hours poring over the data the Zarkonians had shared about the Void Eaters. The creatures, if they could be called that, seemed to defy the laws of physics. They existed as vast, amorphous clouds of dark energy, capable of engulfing entire planets and draining them of all matter and energy. As they approached the target system, Elena called a final briefing with her senior staff. The plan is simple in theory, but execution will be critical, she explained, gesturing to the holographic display of Epsilon Eridani. We'll be working in tandem with the Zarkonian fleet to create a massive energy barrier around the system. If our calculations are correct, this should prevent the Void Eaters from entering and buying us time to develop a more permanent solution. And if the calculations are wrong? Lieutenant Chen asked, voicing the concern on everyone's minds. Elena's expression hardened. Then we fight with everything we've got and hope it's enough. As if on cue, the ship's alarms blared. Commander, the sensor officer called out. Massive energy disturbance detected at the edge of the system. It's them, the Void Eaters. Elena rushed to the bridge, her heart pounding. The main view screen showed a terrifying sight, a roiling mass of darkness, punctuated by flashes of purple energy, approaching the outermost planet of Epsilon Eridani. Battle stations, Elena ordered. Initiate the barrier protocol, and someone get me High Admiral Zixtol on the comm. The bridge erupted into controlled chaos as crew members rushed to their positions. The view screen split, showing both the approaching Void Eaters and the face of High Admiral Zixtol. You see it, Commander? The Zarkonian leader asked, his usual composure slipping. Elena nodded grimly. We do. Are your ships in position? Affirmative. Initiating barrier generation, now. The space around Epsilon Eridani, lit up as both human and Zarkonian ships, projected massive energy fields. The fields began to interlock, forming a shimmering dome around the entire star system. For a moment, it seemed to be working. The Void Eaters' advance slowed as they encountered the barrier. But then, to Elena's horror, tendrils of darkness began to seep through. It's not holding, she shouted. We need more power. Zixtol's voice crackled over the comm. We're diverting all non-essential power to the barrier. But it's not enough. We need something more. Elena's mind raced. They had come too far to fail now. Suddenly, an idea struck her. Dangerous, potentially suicidal, but it might just work. Kai. She turned to her second-in-command. Prepare to initiate a warp core overload. The bridge fell silent. Chen's eyes widened in disbelief. Commander, that would destroy the horizon. And potentially take out half the Void Eaters with us, Elena finished. It's a risk we have to take. If we can weaken them enough, the combined fleets might stand a chance. She turned back to the comm. High Admiral, we're going to create a gap in the barrier. When we do, hit the Void Eaters with everything you've got. Zixtol's facial tentacles writhed in what Elena now recognized as respect. A bold move, Commander. We will not waste the opportunity your sacrifice provides. Elena took a deep breath, looking around at her crew. It's been an honor serving with all of you. Lieutenant Chen, you have the con. Get the rest of the crew to the escape pods. As the bridge cleared out, Elena made her way to engineering. The warp core hummed with barely contained power. She began the overload sequence, her fingers flying over the controls. Come on, you bastards, she muttered, watching as the Void Eaters pressed against the failing barrier. Let's see how you like a taste of human ingenuity. The core's hum turned into a roar. Warnings blared throughout the ship. Elena closed her eyes, thinking of Earth, of all she was fighting to protect. In a blinding flash of light, the UES horizon exploded. The barrier shattered, and for a brief moment, a star was born in the midst of the Void Eater's mass. The creatures recoiled, their cohesion disrupted by the massive energy release. From the bridge of his flagship, High Admiral Zixtal watched in awe. "All ships attack," he ordered. "Do not let Commander Ree's sacrifice be in vain." The combined human and Zarkomian fleet surged forward, weapons blazing. The weakened Void Eaters, caught off guard by the sudden offensive, began to retreat. As the battle raged on, a small escape pod drifted away from the chaos. Inside, Lieutenant Kai Chen watched the flashes of weapons fire, a mixture of grief and determination on his face. Commander Reeves was gone, but her last order echoed in his mind. The war against the Void Eaters had only just begun, and humanity had proven it would not go quietly into the night. The unlikely alliance forged in desperation had passed its first test, but greater challenges lay ahead. And somewhere in the vastness of space, the surviving crew of the UES Horizon carried with them the spark of hope, and the legacy of a commander who had dared to bridge the gap between age-old enemies in the face of annihilation. Secrets of the Void. The escape pod drifted silently through the debris field that was once the UES Horizon. Inside, Lieutenant Kai Chen stared out the small viewport, his mind replaying the final moments of Commander Elena Reeves. The brilliant flash of the warp core overloads still burned in his retinas, a testament to human sacrifice and ingenuity. A sudden beep from the pod's communication system snapped Kai out of his reverie. He reached for the controls, his heart racing. Could it be other survivors? "This is Lieutenant Chen of the UES Horizon. Does anyone copy?" Static crackled for a moment before a familiar voice responded. "Lieutenant Chen, this is High Admiral Zixtal. We've located your pod and are moving to retrieve you. Stand by." Kai's emotions warred within him, relief at being rescued, unease at the prospect of being aboard a Zarkonian vessel. As the massive crystalline ship loomed over his tiny pod, Kai steeled himself. Commander Reeves had believed in this alliance, and he would honor her memory by seeing it through. The tractor beam enveloped the escape pod, guiding it smoothly into the Zarkonian ship's hangar. As the airlock cycled, Kai took a deep breath and stepped out. He found himself surrounded by a group of Zarkonians, their iridescent scales shimmering under the hangar lights. High Admiral Zixtal stood at the forefront, his multifaceted eyes fixed on Kai. "Lieutenant," Zixtal's voice was a mixture of clicks and low rumbles. "Your commander's sacrifice has not been in vain. The Void Eaters have retreated for now, but we have much to discuss." Kai nodded, pushing down his instinctive distrust. "Thank you for the rescue, High Admiral. What's our next move?" Zixtal gestured for Kai to follow him. As they walked through the corridors of the Zarkonian ship, Kai couldn't help but marvel at the alien architecture. Everything seemed to be made of living crystal, pulsing with an inner light. They entered what appeared to be a command center. A large holographic display dominated the room, showing the aftermath of the battle. Kai's breath caught in his throat as he saw the extent of the destruction. "The good news," Zixtal began, "is that we've confirmed the Void Eaters can be hurt. The bad news is that our victory today was costly, and they will return." Kai studied the display, his tactical mind already working on strategies. "We need to find a way to detect them earlier, give ourselves more time to prepare." New voice joined the conversation. "That may be possible, but it will require venturing into territory neither of our species has dared to explore." Kai turned to see a Zarkonian scientist entering the room. Her scales were a paler shade than the others, and she moved with a fluid grace that reminded Kai of a terrestrial serpent. "Lieutenant Chen, this is Nixala, our lead xenophysicist," Zixtal introduced. "She has a theory about the Void Eaters that you need to hear." Nixala approached the holographic display, manipulating it with graceful movements of her elongated fingers. The image shifted, showing a region of space Kai didn't recognize. "We believe the Void Eaters originate from a place we call the Nexus," Nixala explained. "It's a region of space where the fabric of reality is thin, allowing for the crossing of dimensional boundaries." Kai frowned, trying to wrap his head around the concept. "Are you saying these things are from another dimension?" Nixala's facial tentacles rippled in what Kai was beginning to recognize as a sign of affirmation. Precisely. And we think that if we can study the Nexus, we might find a way to predict their movements, or even close the pathways they use to enter our reality. There's just one problem, Zixtal interjected. The Nexus is located in the heart of the Crimson Nebula. It's a region of space so turbulent that no ship, Zarkonian or human, has ever successfully navigated it. Kay's mind raced with the implications. A mission into unknown, potentially lethal territory, with aliens they barely trusted. Yet, if there was even a chance of finding a way to stop the Void Eaters. "What do you need from us?" Kai asked, his decision made. Zixtal's multifaceted eyes seemed to glimmer with approval. "Your human ships are smaller, more maneuverable than ours. We believe that with some modifications, a human vessel might be able to navigate the nebula's currents. But," Nixala added, "we would need to integrate some of our technology with yours. It would require a level of cooperation and trust unprecedented between our species." Kai took a deep breath, considering the weight of the decision before him. He was no longer just a lieutenant. With Commander Reeves gone, he represented humanity in this alliance. "If we do this," Kai said slowly, "we do it together. A joint crew, human and Zarkonian. We share all data, all discoveries, no secrets." Zixtal and Nixala exchanged glances, a silent communication passing between them. Finally, Zixtal turned back to Kai. "Agreed," the High Admiral said. "We'll begin preparations immediately. The fate of both our species may well rest on the success of this mission." Over the next few days, Kai found himself in a whirlwind of activity. A human science vessel, the UES Curiosity, was selected for the mission and brought to the Zarkonian shipyards for modifications. Kai watched in fascination as Zarkonian crystal tech was seamlessly integrated with human systems, creating a hybrid ship unlike anything he'd ever seen. As the preparations continued, Kai spent time getting to know his new Zarkonian colleagues. He was surprised to find that beneath their alien appearance and mannerisms, they shared many of the same hopes and fears as humans. The threat of the Void Eaters had broken down barriers that centuries of conflict had built. On the eve of their departure, Kai stood in the observation lounge of the modified Curiosity, gazing out at the stars. The weight of responsibility settled heavily on his shoulders. So much depended on the success of this mission. "Troubled thoughts, Lieutenant." Kai turned to find Nixala entering the lounge. The Zarkonian scientist moved to stand beside him, her gaze also fixed on the starfield beyond. "Just thinking about what we're about to do," Kai admitted. "Venturing into unknown space, searching for answers that might not even exist. It's daunting." Nixala's facial tentacles rippled in what Kai now recognized as a smile. "That is the nature of scientific pursuit, is it not? To venture into the unknown, to seek answers to questions we've only just learned to ask." Kai nodded, finding unexpected comfort in her words. "I suppose you're right. It's just, a lot has changed so quickly. A few weeks ago, our people were mortal enemies. Now, the fate of both our species rests on our ability to work together." "Perhaps," Nixala mused, "that is the silver lining in this dark cloud that threatens us all. The Void Eaters have given us a common enemy, a reason to look past our differences and see the potential in cooperation." Their conversation was interrupted by the ship's intercom. Lieutenant Chen and Dr. Nixala to the bridge. "We're ready to depart." As they made their way to the bridge, Kai felt a surge of determination. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, human and Zarkonian, united against a common threat. The bridge of the Curiosity was a blend of human and Zarkonian design. Holographic displays shimmered alongside traditional screens, and crystalline structures pulsed with energy next to familiar control panels. Kai took his position at the command chair, while Nixala manned the science station. The rest of the bridge crew, a mix of humans and Zarkonians, looked to him expectantly. "All systems check out, sir," reported the human helmsman. "We're ready to get underway." Kai nodded, taking a deep breath. "Set a course for the Crimson Nebula, maximum safe speed. Let's go find some answers." As the Curiosity's engines hummed to life, Kai couldn't help but think of Commander Reeves. He hoped that wherever she was, she would be proud of what they were attempting. The ship accelerated smoothly, stars streaking past the viewscreen as they entered warp. The Crimson Nebula awaited, its secrets hidden behind veils of cosmic fire and turbulent space. Within its depths lay the key to understanding the Void Eaters, and perhaps the salvation of two species that had only just learned to trust each other. As the Curiosity plunged deeper into uncharted space, Kai Chen knew that the real challenge was only beginning. The Nexus held answers, but it also held dangers beyond imagination. Human ingenuity and Zarkonian technology would be pushed to their limits in the days to come. But for now, as the ship cruised through the silent void, there was a moment of peace, a calm before the storm that lay ahead. Kai allowed himself a small smile. Whatever happened, they were making history. Two former enemy species united in a quest to save not just themselves, but all of known space. The journey to the Crimson Nebula would take several days, even at maximum warp. Kai used this time to familiarize himself with the hybrid systems of the Curiosity and to build rapport with the mixed crew. He found that working alongside the Zarkonians was not as difficult as he had initially feared. Their analytical minds and attention to detail complemented the human crew's adaptability and intuitive problem-solving. As they approached the outer fringes of the nebula, Nixala called Kai to the science lab. The room was a marvel of integrated technology, with Zarkonian crystal matrices interfacing seamlessly with human quantum computers. "Lieutenant, I believe we've made a breakthrough," Nixala said, her excitement evident in the rapid undulation of her facial tentacles. She gestured to a holographic display showing a swirling mass of energy. "We've managed to isolate the quantum signature of the Void Eater's dimensional breach." Kai leaned in, studying the complex data scrolling across the screen. "What does this mean for us?" "It means," Nixala explained, her multifaceted eyes gleaming, "that we might be able to detect their arrival before they fully manifest in our dimension, perhaps even predict where they'll appear next." A surge of hope rose in Kai's chest. This could be the advantage they needed. "Excellent work, Doctor. Can we implement this detection method ship-wide?" Nixala nodded, her elongated fingers dancing over the controls. "Already done. We should be able to detect any Void Eater activity within a radius of several light years." As if on cue, alarms blared throughout the ship. Kai and Nixala exchanged a look of concern before rushing to the bridge. "Report," Kai called out as he entered. The tactical officer, a young Zarkonian named Zixlaw, responded immediately. "Sir, we're detecting a massive energy surge consistent with Void Eater activity. It's coming from within the Crimson Nebula." Kai's blood ran cold. They were walking right into the lion's den. "On screen," he ordered. The main view screen flickered to life, showing the roiling clouds of the Crimson Nebula. At its heart, a darkness was growing, a void that seemed to consume the very light around it. "It appears we were correct about the Nexus," Nixala said, her voice a mix of scientific fascination and fear. "The Void Eaters are using it as a gateway into our dimension." Kai gripped the arms of his command chair, his mind racing through their options. They were outgunned, outmatched, and in unknown territory. But they also had information that could change the course of the war. "We need to get this data back to the fleet," Kai decided. "Helm, plot a course out of the nebula. We'll transmit what we've learned and—" His orders were cut short as the ship suddenly lurched, throwing everyone off balance. The lights flickered, and for a moment, the only illumination came from the pulsing Zarkonian crystals integrated into the ship's systems. "What was that?" Kai demanded as he regained his footing. The human engineer, Sarah Rodriguez, called up from the engine room. "Sir, we're caught in some kind of gravitational eddy. It's interfering with our warp field. We can't break free. Kai watched in horror as the view screen showed them being drawn inexorably towards the heart of the nebula and the growing void at its center. The Curiosity shuddered under the strain, its hybrid systems struggling against forces they were never designed to withstand. Reroute all available power to the structural integrity field and shields, Kai ordered. Nixala, is there anything in your research that could help us? The Zarkonian scientist was already at work, her fingers flying over the controls. Perhaps if we can modulate our shields to match the quantum frequency of the Void Eater's dimensional breach, we might be able to slip through without being torn apart. It was a desperate plan, but it was all they had. Do it, Kai nodded. As Nixala worked, Kai addressed the crew. Listen up, everyone. We're about to attempt something never done before. We're going to ride this gravitational current right into the heart of the Void Eater's domain. Stay at your posts, trust in each other, and remember, we're making history here. The crew, human and Zarkonian alike, straightened at his words. There was fear in their eyes, but also determination. They had come too far to give up now. Shield modulation complete, Nixala reported. It's our best approximation based on the data we have. Kai nodded grimly. Helm, take us in. Let's see what's on the other side of that void. The Curiosity plunged forward, its hull groaning under the immense gravitational forces. The view screen showed a maelstrom of cosmic energy swirling around them, punctuated by flashes of otherworldly lightning. And at the center of it all, the void grew larger, threatening to swallow them whole. For a moment, everything went dark. The ship's systems flickered and died, leaving them in utter silence. Kai held his breath, wondering if this was the end. Then, with a sudden lurch, light returned. The view screen came back to life, and collective gasps filled the bridge. Hey, we're in a place that defied description. Swerving clouds of energy and colors Kai had never seen before surrounded them. In the distance, massive structures floated in the void, geometric shapes that seemed to fold in on themselves in impossible ways. And all around them, moving with ominous purpose, were the Void Eaters. Up close, they were even more terrifying. Amorphous masses of dark energy shot through with veins of purple lightning. They seemed to pulse with a malevolent intelligence, and Kai knew with certainty that they had noticed the intruder in their realm. My God, Kai breathed. We've done it. We're in their dimension. Nixala's voice was filled with awe and terror. Lieutenant, the readings, they're off the charts. This place, it's rewriting the laws of physics as we know them. Kai knew they had only moments before the Void Eaters would be upon them. They needed to gather as much data as possible and find a way back to their own dimension. Full census sweep, he ordered. Record everything. And someone find us a way out of here. As the crew scrambled to comply, Kai couldn't help but feel a mix of terror and exhilaration. They had ventured where no human or Zarkonian had gone before, into the very heart of the threat that endangered both their species. Whatever happened next, the knowledge they gained here could change everything. The war against the Void Eaters was entering a new phase, and the unlikely alliance of humans and Zarkonians was at the forefront of it all. With the Void Eaters closing in and the fabric of reality itself seeming to unravel around them, Kai Chen and his crew faced their greatest challenge: betrayal among the stars. The Curiosity hung suspended in the alien dimension, a mote of familiar reality in a sea of cosmic chaos. Lieutenant Kai Chen gripped the arms of his command chair, his knuckles white as he watched the Void Eaters closing in on the view screen. Status report, he barked, fighting to keep his voice steady. Sarah Rodriguez, the human engineer, responded from her station. Shields holding at 60%, but they're fluctuating. This dimension is playing havoc with our systems. Nixala's fingers danced over her console, her multifaceted eyes reflecting the swirling energies outside. I'm recording as much data as I can, but our sensors weren't designed for this. We're seeing energies and particles that shouldn't even exist. Kai nodded grimly. They needed more time, but the Void Eaters weren't going to give it to them. Helm, evasive maneuvers. Keep us away from those things as long as you can. The Curiosity lurched into motion, weaving through the impossible geometries of the alien dimension. The Void Eaters pursued, their amorphous forms stretching and contorting as they gave chase. Lieutenant, the tactical officer, called out, "I'm detecting an energy signature similar to the breach we came through. It could be our way out." Hope surged through Kai. Location: Bearing 047 Mark 198 replied, "But sir, it's directly through that cluster of Void Eaters." Kay's mind raced. They couldn't fight their way through. Not in this alien realm where the Void Eaters held every advantage. They needed a distraction. "Nix Allah," he turned to thee, "is there any way we can use what we've learned about their quantum signature against them?" Nix Allah's facial tentacles writhed in concentration. "Perhaps, if we invert our shield frequency to match their signature, we might be able to create a localized disruption. It could disorient them long enough for us to slip past." "Do it," Kai ordered. He then addressed the helm. "Once that disruption hits, punch it. Full power to engines. We're going home." The tension on the bridge was palpable as Nix Allah made the final adjustments. The Void Eaters loomed closer, their otherworldly forms filling the view screen. "Now," Kai shouted. A pulse of energy erupted from the Curiosity, rippling through space-time. The nearest Void Eaters recoiled, their forms seeming to unravel at the edges. "Go!" Kai yelled, and the helmsman complied. The ship shot forward, engines straining as they pushed through the swarm of disoriented Void Eaters. For a heart-stopping moment, it seemed they might not make it. Then, with a flash of light and a bone-jarring lurch, they were through. The chaotic energies of the alien dimension gave way to the familiar starfield of their own universe. A ragged cheer went up from the crew. "We did it," Kai breathed, allowing himself a moment of relief. "Status report. Is everyone okay?" As the crew called out their stations, Kai turned to Nixala. "Doctor, how much data were you able to gather?" The Zarkonian scientist's eyes gleamed with excitement. "More than we could have hoped for, Lieutenant. The insights we've gained into the Void Eater's nature, their dimension, it could change everything." Kai nodded, a spark of hope kindling in his chest. "All right, let's get this information back, Toe." His words were cut off as the ship suddenly rocked violently. Warning klaxons blared throughout the bridge. "What now?" Kai demanded. Zixwell's voice was tight with alarm. "Sir, we're under attack. It's a Zarkonian warship." Kai's blood ran cold. "What? Hail them immediately." The view screen flickered to life, revealing the bridge of the Zarkonian vessel. Kai's jaw clenched as he recognized the figure at its center, High Admiral Zixtol. "Admiral," Kai began, fighting to keep his voice level. "What's the meaning of this? We're on a joint mission." "A mission that has succeeded beyond our wildest expectations," Zixtol interrupted, his multifaceted eyes glittering with an emotion Kai couldn't quite place. "You've brought us invaluable data on our enemy, Lieutenant Chen. Data that will ensure the survival of the Zarkonian people." A chill ran down Kai's spine as the implications of Zixtol's words sank in. "Admiral, whatever you're thinking, this isn't the way. We're supposed to be allies." Zixtol's facial tentacles writhed in what Kai now recognized as contempt. "Allies of convenience, nothing more. Did you really think centuries of conflict could be forgotten so easily? The Void Eaters are a threat, yes, but they're also an opportunity. With the knowledge you've brought us, we can not only defend ourselves, but potentially harness their power." "That's insane," Kai shot back. "You've seen what these things can do. Trying to control them would doom us all." "A human perspective," Zixtol dismissed. "Your species has always lacked vision. Now, you'll transmit all the data you've gathered to my ship. In return, I'll allow your crew to live as prisoners of the Zarkonian Empire." Kay's mind raced. They were outgunned and their systems were still recovering from the journey through the alien dimension. Fighting their way out wasn't an option. He glanced at Nixala, seeing the horror and shame in her eyes. She, like the other Zarkonians on his crew, had been kept in the dark about this betrayal. And if we refuse? Kai asked, buying time as he frantically tried to think of a way out. Zixtal's expression hardened. Then your ship will be destroyed, and we'll salvage what we can from the wreckage. You have 1 minute to comply. The transmission cut off, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Orders, sir? Sarah asked, her voice tight with tension. Kai took a deep breath, weighing their options. They couldn't let this data fall into the wrong hands, but he also had a responsibility to his crew. Nixala, he turned to the Zarkonian scientist. Is there any way we can transmit the data but corrupt it somehow? Give them something that looks real but is ultimately useless. Nixala's facial tentacles rippled thoughtfully. It's possible, but it would take time, more than we have. What if we transmitted a portion of the real data along with some corrupted files? Sarah suggested. It might buy us some time while they verify it. Kai nodded. It was a risk, but it was their best option. Do it, and while you're at it, see if you can slip a message to any nearby human ships. We're going to need backup. As Nixala and Sarah worked frantically to prepare the data package, Kai addressed the rest of the crew. Listen up, everyone. I know this is a shock, but we're not out of this fight yet. Zarkonians, I want you to know that we don't hold you responsible for the actions of your leadership. We're still a team, and we're going to get through this together. The Zarkonian crew members straightened, determination replacing the shame in their eyes. Zixlaw spoke up. We're with you, Lieutenant. The Admiral's actions go against everything we believe in. Kai felt a surge of pride in his crew. Despite everything, they were standing together. All right, let's show them what this alliance is really made of. Tactical, be ready with evasive maneuvers. Engineering, I want every ounce of power you can give to shields and engines. We're not going down without a fight. As the crew sprang into action, Kai turned back to the view screen, where the Zarkonian warship loomed menacingly. Whatever happened next, he knew that the fate of 2 species, and perhaps the entire galaxy, hung in the balance. The next few moments were a flurry of activity. Nixala and Sarah worked feverishly to prepare the data package, while the rest of the crew readied the ship for potential combat. Package ready, Lieutenant, Nixala reported, her voice tense. I've embedded a hidden message in the corrupted data. If there are any loyal Zarkonians on that ship, they'll know something's wrong. Kai nodded grimly. Good work. Transmit it. As the data streamed towards the Zarkonian warship, Kai watched the viewscreen intently. For several agonizing moments, nothing happened. Then suddenly, the warship's weapons powered down. A new transmission came through, and Kai's heart leaped as he recognized the face on the screen. It was Zixnor, Zixtal's second-in-command. Lieutenant Chen, Zixnor's voice was urgent. We received your hidden message. A significant portion of the crew, myself included, do not support the Admiral's actions. We're prepared to stand with you, but we need to act fast. Relief flooded through Kai, but he kept his expression neutral. This could still be a trick. Galactic. We've managed to isolate the Admiral and his loyalists on the command deck, Zixnor explained. But they still have control of the ship's primary systems. If you can disable our shields, we can transport a team to your ship and coordinate our next move. It was a risk, but one they had to take. Kai turned to Zixlaw. Can you target their shield generators without causing significant damage to the rest of the ship? The Zarkonian tactical officer nodded confidently. Absolutely, sir. One precise hit should do it. Make it happen, Kai ordered. He then addressed Zixnor. We're taking down your shields now, Commander. I hope you're ready. The Curiosity's weapons lashed out, striking the Zarkonian warship with surgical precision. A shimmer rippled across the larger vessel as its shields collapsed. Moments later, the transporter room reported incoming signatures. Kai, flanked by Nixala and a security team, rushed to meet them. Commander Zixnor materialized with a small group of Zarkonian officers. The tension in the room was palpable as the two groups faced each other, years of distrust warring with the necessity of their current alliance. "Commander." Kai stepped forward, extending his hand in a human gesture of greeting. "Welcome aboard the Curiosity." Zixnor hesitated for a moment before grasping Kai's hand in his elongated fingers. "Thank you, Lieutenant. I apologize for the actions of Admiral Zixtol. His betrayal goes against everything the Zarkonian people stand for." "We can discuss apologies later," Kai replied firmly. "Right now, we need to secure that ship and make sure the data on the Void Eaters doesn't fall into the wrong hands. What's your plan?" Zixnor's multifaceted eyes gleamed with determination. "We've managed to lock down most of the ship's systems, but the Admiral and his loyalists are holed up on the command deck. They're threatening to transmit the data to other radical factions within our government." Nixala stepped forward, her facial tentacles writhing with concern. "If that happens, it could fracture our entire society. The temptation to try and harness the power of the Void Eaters would be too great for some to resist." Kai nodded grimly. "Then we need to stop that transmission at all costs." "Commander, can your people get us onto that ship undetected?" "We can," Zixnor confirmed, "but we'll need to move fast. The Admiral is growing desperate." As they quickly formulated a plan, Kai couldn't help but marvel at the strange turns his life had taken. Here he was, about to lead a joint human-Zarkonian team to stop a rogue admiral from potentially dooming both their species. Commander Reeves would never have believed it. "All right," Kai addressed the assembled group. "We have one shot at this. Let's show the Admiral what our alliance is really capable of. Ear it, Commander. What do you propose?" As they prepared for the assault on the Zarkonian warship, Kai knew that the next few hours would determine not just the fate of their mission, but the future of human-Zarkonian relations and perhaps the survival of both their species in the face of the Void Eater threat. The true test of their unlikely alliance was about to begin: the human factor. The corridor of the Zarkonian warship was eerily silent as Lieutenant Kai Chen led his mixed team of humans and loyal Zarkonians towards the command deck. The crystalline walls pulsed with an inner light, casting strange shadows that seemed to dance and shift as they moved. "How much further?" Kai whispered to Commander Zixnor, who was taking point. The Zarkonian officer's multifaceted eyes glinted in the low light. "Just around this bend, but be warned, the Admiral will have set up defenses." Kai nodded, tightening his grip on his phase pistol. The weapon felt strange in his hand, a hybrid of human and Zarkonian technology, much like the unlikely alliance they now found themselves in. As they approached the final turn, Nixala suddenly held up a hand, her facial tentacles quivering. "Wait," she hissed. "I'm detecting an energy buildup ahead. Some kind of force field." Kai frowned. A direct assault would be suicide. They needed another way in. His eyes scanned the corridor, looking for any weakness, any opportunity. That's when he noticed it, a small maintenance hatch near the floor, almost hidden by the pulsing crystals. "There," he pointed. "That hatch. Where does it lead?" Zixnor's eyes widened in recognition. The secondary system's conduit. It runs behind the command deck, but it's incredibly narrow. We Zarkonians could never fit. A plan began to form in Kay's mind. It was risky, borderline insane, but it might just work. "But a human could," he said, a determined glint in his eye. Nixala shook her head, her expression a mixture of concern and admiration. "Lieutenant, the radiation levels in there are extreme. Even with protection, you'd have minutes at most before suffering severe cellular damage." Kai met her gaze steadily. "Then I'll just have to be quick, won't I?" He turned to Sarah Rodriguez, who had insisted on joining the assault team. "Sarah, I'll need you to guide me through. Can you interface with the ship's systems from here?" The engineer nodded, already pulling out her datapad. "On it, sir. I'll have eyes on you the whole way." As Sarah worked to establish a connection, Kai addressed the rest of the team. "All right, here's the plan. I'll go through the conduit and try to disable the force field from behind. The moment it drops, you all storm in. We need to overwhelm them quickly. We can't let that data transmission get out." Zixnor placed a hand on Kai's shoulder, the gesture awkward but sincere. "This is a great risk you're taking, Lieutenant. On behalf of my people, I thank you." Kai managed a wry smile. "Thank me when we've succeeded, Commander. Now, let's get that hatch open." As the team worked to unseal the maintenance hatch, Kai couldn't help but reflect on the strange turns his life had taken. A few weeks ago, he would never have imagined risking his life to save a Zarkonian ship. But now, looking at the determined faces around him, human and alien alike, he knew it was worth it. This alliance, as unlikely as it was, represented hope for both their species. The hatch finally creaked open, revealing a narrow, dimly lit tunnel. The air that wafted out was hot and carried a metallic tang that made Kai's nose wrinkle. "Radiation shielding is at maximum," Sarah reported, handing Kai a small earpiece. "But it won't last long. You'll have about 10 minutes before the levels become critical." Kai nodded, taking a deep breath. "Right. See you all on the other side." With one last look at his team, Kai lowered himself into the conduit. The space was incredibly tight, forcing him to crawl on his elbows and knees. The heat was immediate and oppressive, and he could feel the hairs on his arms standing on end from the ambient energy. "Okay, Sarah," he whispered into his comm. "Talk me through this." Sarah's voice came through, slightly distorted by interference. "You're doing great, sir. Keep going straight for about 20 meters, then there should be a junction on your left." Kai inched forward, every movement an effort in the confined space. Sweat beaded on his forehead, and he could feel his heart racing. Whether from exertion or radiation exposure, he couldn't tell. As he reached the junction, a sudden tremor ran through the ship. Kai froze. "What was that?" Nixola's voice came through, tense with worry. "The Admiral's loyalists are trying to overload the main reactor. They must know we're coming." "Lieutenant," Zixnor added, "we're out of time. If that reactor goes, it'll tear a hole in space-time. The Void Eaters will pour through." The gravity of the situation hit Kai like a physical blow. This was no longer just about preventing a data leak. The fate of the entire sector now hung in the balance. "Understood." Kai grunted, forcing himself to move faster despite the growing discomfort. "Sarah, what's next?" "Left at the junction, then up. There should be an access panel that will put you right behind the command deck." Kai followed her instructions, his muscles screaming in protest. As he climbed, he could feel the radiation beginning to take its toll. His vision swam, and nausea roiled in his stomach. Finally, he reached the access panel. Through it, he could hear muffled voices, Admiral Zixtal and his loyalists, no doubt. "I'm in position," Kai whispered, his voice hoarse. "What am I looking for?" Sarah's response was immediate. "There should be a cluster of crystals to your right. They're part of the force field generator. If you can disrupt their resonance frequency, it should bring down the field." Kai squinted through the haze of radiation sickness, spotting the crystals Sarah had described. They pulsed with an inner light humming faintly. With shaking hands, Kai pulled out the modified phase pistol. He'd only get one shot at this. Taking a deep breath, he aimed carefully and fired. The beam struck the crystals, causing them to flash brightly before shattering. Immediately, Kai heard shouts of alarm from the command deck. "Force field is down," he managed to croak into his comm. "Go, go, go." Even through the thick bulkhead, Kai could hear the sounds of his team storming the command deck. Phaser fire and shouts echoed as he slumped against the wall of the conduit, his strength finally giving out. As darkness began to creep in at the edges of his vision, Kai allowed himself a small smile. He'd done his part. Now it was up to the others to finish this. The last thing he heard before losing consciousness was Sarah's voice, tinny and distant through the comm. "Hang on, Lieutenant. We're coming for you." Kay's world faded to black, the fate of 2 species and the entire sector hanging in the balance, dependent on the success of the unlikely alliance he had helped forge. When Kai regained consciousness, he found himself in the Curiosity's med bay. The harsh lights made him wince, and every cell in his body seemed to ache. "Easy there, hero," a familiar voice said. Kai turned his head to see Sarah Rodriguez sitting by his bedside, a relieved smile on her face. "Did we?" Kai began, his voice a rasp. "We got them," Sarah confirmed. "Admiral Zixtal and his loyalists are in custody. The data is secure." Kai let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. And the reactor? Nixala managed to stabilize it just in time. It was a close call, but we made it. As Kai's vision cleared, he realized the medbay was crowded. Humans and Zarkonians alike filled the room, all watching him with a mixture of concern and admiration. Commander Zixnor stepped forward, his usually stoic face showing clear emotion. "Lieutenant Chen, on behalf of the Zarkonian people, I extend our deepest gratitude. Your actions today have not only saved countless lives, but have also shown us the true meaning of alliance and sacrifice." Kai managed a weak smile. "Just doing my job, Commander. We're in this together after all." Nixala moved to Kai's other side, her facial tentacles rippling with what he now recognized as affection. "You've changed everything, Kai. The way our people see humans, the way we see ourselves. This alliance, it's real now. It means something." As Kai looked around the room, seeing humans and Zarkonians standing side by side, he felt a swell of pride and hope. They had faced betrayal, confronted ancient prejudices, and come out stronger for it. "So," Kai said, attempting to sit up despite the protests of his aching body, "what's our next move?" Sarah gently pushed him back down. "First, you rest and recover. That little stunt in the conduit did a number on you. But after that," she glanced at Zixnor and Nixala, a spark of excitement in her eyes. Zixnor nodded, understanding the unspoken question. "We've received word from both our governments. In light of recent events, they've agreed to formalize our alliance. A joint task force is being formed to combat the Void Eater threat. And guess who they want to lead it?" Sarah added with a grin. Kai blinked in surprise. "Me, but I'm just a lieutenant." Nixala made a sound that Kai had come to recognize as Zarkonian laughter. A lieutenant who'd just prevented an interstellar incident, stopped a coup, and saved an entire sector from dimensional invaders. "I'd say you're qualified." As the implications sank in, Kai felt a mix of excitement and trepidation. Leading a joint human Zarkonian task force against the greatest threat their galaxy had ever faced, it was a monumental responsibility. But looking around at the faces of his crew, human and Zarkonian, united in purpose, Kai knew they were ready for the challenge. "All right then," he said, his voice growing stronger. "Let's show these Void Eaters what our alliance can really do." The room erupted in cheers, the sound of human voices mingling with Zarkonian clicks and rumbles. It was the sound of hope, of unity, of a future where ancient enemies could become the closest of allies. As the celebration continued around him, Kai closed his eyes, allowing himself a moment of reflection. He thought of Commander Reeves, of her sacrifice that had set this all in motion. He silently promised her that he would make the most of this opportunity, that her death would not be in vain. The Void Eaters were still out there, a threat looming on the horizon. But for the first time since they had appeared, Kai felt genuinely optimistic about their chances. Human ingenuity combined with Zarkonian technology and the strength of their newfound alliance, it was a force to be reckoned with. The real battle was just beginning, but Kai Chen was ready. They all were. Together, they would face the darkness and forge a new future for both their species. As the medbay slowly cleared, leaving Kai to rest, he found himself eager for the challenges ahead. The human factor had turned the tide once again, not through superior strength or technology, but through adaptability, trust, and the willingness to reach out to former enemies. It was this, Kai realized, that would be their greatest weapon against the Void Eaters. Not advanced shields or powerful weapons, but the ability to unite, to overcome differences, and to face the unknown together. With that comforting thought, Kai drifted off to sleep, dreams of starships and alien worlds, and a future bright with possibility filling his mind. As Kai drifted into a peaceful slumber, the medbay's soft hum provided a soothing backdrop to his dreams. The celebration had quieted, but its energy still lingered in the air, a palpable reminder of the momentous alliance that had just been forged. Hours passed, and Kai stirred, his eyes fluttering open to the dim lighting of the medical bay. As his vision cleared, he noticed a figure seated beside his bed. It was Zarka, the Zarkonian ambassador who had been instrumental in brokering the peace between their species. "You sleep soundly for one who carries the weight of 2 worlds on his shoulders," Zarka observed, his multifaceted eyes glinting with what Kai had come to recognize as amusement. Kai sat up slowly, wincing slightly at the lingering soreness in his body. "I suppose I've learned to grab rest when I can," he replied with a small smile. "How long was I out?" "Long enough for the celebrations to die down and for the real work to begin," Zarka answered, his antennae twitching slightly. "The Joint Council is convening as we speak, discussing strategies to combat the Void Eaters." Kai nodded, a determined expression settling on his face. "Then we should join them. There's no time to waste." As Kai moved to stand, Zarka placed a clawed hand gently on his arm. "There is something you should know, Kai Chen. During your rest, our long-range sensors detected unusual activity at the edge of the Andromeda Galaxy. We believe it may be related to the Void Eaters." Kai's heart raced at the news. What kind of activity? Zarka's mandibles clicked thoughtfully before he responded. "Energy signatures unlike anything we've seen before. It appears they're amassing a force far greater than our initial estimates suggested." For a moment, fear threatened to overwhelm Kai. But then he remembered the cheers of unity, the promise of their newfound alliance. He squared his shoulders and met Zarka's gaze. "Then we'll just have to be stronger," Kai said firmly. "Together, we've already accomplished what once seemed impossible. We'll face this threat the same way, united." Zarka's antennae quivered in what Kai had learned was a sign of approval. "Your optimism is admirable, Kai Chen. It is a trait we Zarkonians have come to value in humans." As they made their way out of the med bay and toward the council chambers, Kai felt a renewed sense of purpose. The path ahead was fraught with danger and uncertainty, but he was no longer walking it alone. Humans and Zarkonians, former enemies turned allies, would face the darkness together. The council chamber doors loomed before them, beyond which lay the future of both their species. Kai took a deep breath, exchanged a nod with Zarka, and stepped forward into the next chapter of their interstellar saga.